Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Echo of Futurepast number 2, continuing our scholarly examination of this amazing mid-80s anthology title. What a way to start off. We got this beautiful faux Frazetta painting by Arthur Suydam, and oh man, there's some nice stuff. Just a beautiful oil painting. Very Frazetta-esque, and it was very nice to get even faux Frazetta back then because he wasn't doing anything in comics. So luckily we had Arthur Suydam giving us a little methadone instead of some pure Frazetta heroin. But I gotta say, this is a great issue, guys. The first issue I liked a lot, and this one really kicks it up a notch. Got the contents page. And we start off with the second chapter of Arthur Suydam's Mudwogs. I really got to learn how to pronounce his name. I just can't wrap my mouth around it. Suydam? Okay, so right where we left off, this ogre-like giant is rampaging through this town. He's got fists full of town people he's just throwing in his mouth and swallowing. And last panel of the last story, he had just noticed Mudwog's amazing colossal girlfriend in the distance, and he's quite smitten. "Baby, come to Papa," he says. And this is just totally shows off, like, I've talked about this before, just I love how Suydam is such an accomplished painter and illustrator. His stuff is just top notch. Just beautiful graphics. But then he has this like scatological underground comics like sensibility. So to wit, he grabs one of the townspeople, this woman, grabs her by the legs and blows up her butthole and inflates her like a balloon. I guess trying to impress the girlfriend. He presents it to her. And her head pops off and all of her guts fly out. Oh, man. So he keeps he makes a necklace out of the townspeople to win over the affections of the girlfriend, and she's not having it. He's like, "Kiss me, you fool." God, just look at this art here. Just every page looks so good. Look, the colors even, just so beautiful. So pleasing to the eye, these pages. I love this panel here. He's just got his face buried in her butt, just like, "Oh, I love you." She's like, "Get away from me." And then Mudwog shows up. He's on this little precipice here, this little rock formation. And he basically says, "What the hell are you doing?" And the giant is all like, "Are you serious? I'm going to stomp you like a bug. Why aren't you running to the hills like all the other townspeople?" And Mudwog is like, "Don't make me laugh." He's basically putting up this front. He's not backing down. He's completely fearless. So this giant is just perplexed. He's like, "Oh man, how am I going to kill this guy?" So he feels the most pain. He's like thinking of ways to torture him. He can't believe that he's confronting him like this. While he's thinking, he's lost in thought, Mudwog jumps into his wee-wee hole and climbs inside of him. And the giant's like, "What the fuck?" So inside the body, we see these very cartoony-like panels. And then he lights a match. And he's inside the monster. And then these creatures attack him. He's like, "Jisms!" And they're like these giant, well, to his size, these giant jisms with legs and spines, and they're all over him. So he breaks away and runs away. And I guess he loses him somewhere in the digestive tract, because it looks like he appears in the stomach here, because all of the townspeople are there that he swallowed, he gobbled up. They're all kind of stuck there, and they're just kind of standing around looking forlorn, just like, ooh. It's such a weird little almost silent sequence where there's this old guy playing banjo. Mudwog walks up to him, asks for directions, and the guy points to sets him on his way. Just a weird little sequence. So I guess the giant has fallen asleep. He's taking a nap. And Mudwog pops out of his mouth and wakes him up. And the giant clubs himself in the face trying to hit Mudwog. And then he keeps popping up on various parts of his body. And so the giant is basically pummeling himself trying to get Mudwog. This is like an old Bugs Bunny gag, I think. Man, look at these 2 pages, too. I gotta shut up about the art. This just looks so good to me. And then at one point he pops up on his belly button. I like how there's a little caption here with an arrow, belly button. Just so you don't mistake this for another part of the giant's anatomy, because it looks kind of weird. So, of course, he punches himself in the stomach trying to get Mudwog. And Mudwog jumps down to this building, and the giant says, "Okay, you win." It's like, but he's lying. He's pretending to be defeated, but he's really just trying to lull Mudwog into a false sense of security. And then he charges at Mudwog, and he rams into this building. And the caption says, "Could this really be the end?" And it is for the giant. I guess he beamed himself so hard he died. And I guess some time has passed, because we see that the townspeople have turned the giant into almost like an amusement park. We see picnickers under the shade of his belly. There's like this weird walking bridge going up to his mouth, coming out of his ears. Looks like there's another one going into his butt. So strange. And Mudwog is just walking away, pleased with himself. Oh, I love that stuff. Oh man, I forgot about this, guys. So when these came out, I was like, well, I don't know, 16. This was my favorite. I loved Hom. And for some reason, I never went back and read these. It's been 30 years since I've looked at this. In all those intervening years, I never read about Carlos Giménez, never read about Hom anywhere. Nobody was talking about it. I've read a lot of comics journalism over the years. I'm a total nerd about comics, as you probably surmise. And I've read hundreds of fanzines and articles. Nobody mentioned this. And I remember loving it. But I gotta say, after reading it again last night, I fucking love this 10 times more than I thought I did. This shit is so good. So it's called Hom by Spanish artist Carlos Giménez. But it's from a story by Brian W. Aldiss, the great science fiction writer. And this stuff is so good. I love this way we start off, this little kind of just a slow fade in. And we see this bee going up to this flower. The flower eats it, kind of like a Venus flytrap. Then this bigger Venus flytrap chomps down on that one. And then we see a blade cut through the stem of this carnivorous plant. And it's the blade that belongs to Hom, our protagonist. I love this, how the blade goes through the panel, like showing that, like, you know, the time. Is that whole sequential thing that, Steranko and Paul Gulacy did so well. And here we have chapter 1. Man, look at this stuff. This is like totally like Alex Nino great. Just the visual imagination, the way he draws alien worlds and just alien stuff. Everything is just amazingly drawn. So this flying creature goes whizzing by, distracts Hom's girlfriend, Wynn. She falls off this precipice and lands onto an even bigger carnivorous plant. Hom says, "Don't move. I'm coming to get you." And he whistles. And these things called floaters come down. They have no real intelligence of their own. But I guess if you summon them, they'll like come to you and you can use them as a transport device. So he rides one of these floaters down, and just as he's about to rescue Wynn, the tendrils of this plant close in on her and consume her, and she's just screaming. Look at this face of Hom there, the emotion on that. He's just horrified. So he just walks off, completely devastated. As he's walking through the forest, this piece of protoplasm falls on his head. Hom barely notices it because he's so grief-stricken. And he's sitting there talking to himself, just thinking like, man, without Win, I don't even want to live another moment longer. And then he hears this voice, I will help you. And Ham says, who's that? Where are you? And it's the thing on his head. He says, I will help you as I've helped others. I have joined with your brain. Thanks to me, you will be cunning and wise and powerful. I will go everywhere with you and you will obey. Look at this. That is just like Droulet, some more Alex Dino. I don't know. It's just insane. Just the visual imagination he's showing off there. Basically, he tells Ham that you're a small creature that I could destroy in an instant, so you have to obey me. I know a great deal about your kind and your world. Ages ago, your kind ruled the world. So apparently, whoever, I don't know if this is supposed to be man in the future and the world's all crazy now, or some alien world, but the main species has degenerated into like a caveman-like state. So Ham says, okay, but I gotta sleep now. So when Ham wakes up, there's these two goofy-looking dudes just staring at him. And they're asking Ham if he's got any food. He says, who are you two jabos? Maybe, I guess I'll call him that. That's a good name for him. And they seem to be very meek. They're like, don't hit me. It's like, we'll have fish soon. We don't have fish now. We're fishermen. And Ham says, wait, I'm coming with you. And as Ham's walking after them, he notices that they have huge tails. He can't even see where they end. They just trail off into the distance. One of the Jabos says, no, you can't come any further. We're coming close to the trees. And he says, why can't I come? And they're like, haha, don't be silly. You don't have a tail. So the protoplasm tells Ham, commands Ham to follow them at a distance. So he sees that these Jabos, the reason why their tails seem to be endless, they're all connected to this tree. This tree is like a parasitic mind that controls all of these Jabos. The tree is basically causing them to build this raft. They wouldn't even know how to do it otherwise. It's like a hive mind. One of the Jabos finds Ham and says, you should have been following us. I'm going to escort you farther away. So when they're at a certain distance where no one can see, the protoplasm commands Ham to chop off his tail. So this tendril wraps around Ham, but Ham hacks his way out of it. And he basically interrogates this Jabo. The trees basically capture these creatures when they're young. They feed and care for us like a mother. And this Jabo is basically saying, please let me go. I've got to find a new mother vine to connect to. Because Ham is basically saying, under the control of the protoplasm, it's like, I freed you. You're not a slave to the tree anymore. He's like, no, I want to be. I don't want to be without my mother tree. So Ham is kind of telling this to the protoplasm, like, he's not happy. And he's like, shut up, Ham. He's like, you got to get that raft. God, I love this cartooning, the faces and everything. And he's, on top of that, he's an amazing storyteller. Like this, the way he tells the story and the scenes of action, just perfect classic storytelling. So Ham jumps onto the raft. The creatures start attacking him. But, you know, they're pretty benign creatures. They don't really know how to fight. And the protoplasm says, Ham, cut through their tails. They're only puppets of the tree. So he does. And just like puppets with their strings cut, they all fall down. I guess the tree feeds them energy. Then the tendrils basically try to reconnect to their servants. And the protoplasm commands Ham to cut the rope so the raft will be adrift and float away from the trees. A lot of the creatures, the Jabos, fall into the water, and these piranha-like fish devour them. Ham is pretty horrified. He says, why did they have to die? They didn't harm anyone. And the protoplasm says, you had to have the raft and demonstrate your strength. But I didn't want to do any of this. Not at all. You did it. It's done. Forget it. They didn't even defend themselves. And there's 3 of these Jabos are still left on the raft, just cringing in fear of Ham. And Ham just breaks down. And he says, you used me. I can't fight you, but I hate you. I hate you. So we realize this protoplasm doesn't have very good plans for Ham. He's very insidious ambitions for what he wants Ham to do, which of course we'll find out in the next few chapters. He says, enjoy it, Ham. You're on your way to great power. And then as the boat drifts away, the camera pulls back. We see another one of those little bee creatures, and one of those flying creatures flies right by and gobbles him up. So we can tell that this is a pretty harsh world. Yeah, I gotta say, it's so funny. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't really like this art that much. I didn't appreciate it. Because, I was like 16. I was probably thinking, man, I wish this guy drew more like John Byrne or Neil Adams. But now I just look at this and I'm in awe. I can't wait to read the next chapter. I'm gonna wait, just like you guys have to wait to watch it. I'm gonna wait until the night before to read it. And really looking forward to it. Even better than I remembered. Really digging this series. So now we have chapter 2, Frankenstein, Count Dracula, and Werewolf by Neil Adams. I gotta say, the art in this one really steps up. This is some beautiful, classic Neil Adams to me. Like, when I was a little kid, I thought Neil Adams was the best artist ever. A lot of comic fans did, but he wasn't drawing much. Every now and then he'd do a cover. Pretty much by 75, he was doing paperback covers, portfolios. He did that Muhammad Ali comic, but he pretty much checked out of the comics industry. But I knew who he was and just loved everything he did. So seeing this art, this is like classic mid-70s Neil Adams stuff. It was just like the inner child within me was just like, oh, this is the best thing ever. Like, I still respond to it in a very positive way. I just love Neil Adams. I probably always will. So back to the story. Frankenstein is making a monster for Vlad, Count Dracula, who basically has his fiancée Erica hostage. So he has to create this monster for him. He's almost done, and he tells Dracula, he says, I'm not going to finish until you show me that Erica's safe and sound. Some of his minions bring Erica in. She seems fine. And he says, fine. Okay, I'll finish the monster. Pumps it full of raw electricity. And the monster awakes. Oh man, just this page. My inner child is very happy. Love this Neil Adams stuff. And, but as soon as it fully wakes, it breaks its shackles and it's enraged. It starts thrashing about, knocks over Frankenstein. Dracula commands his minions to attack the monster and subdue it, but he just throws them away like rag dolls. And then he notices Erica. He seems to be, he stops for a second. He seems to be transfixed by her. And Frankenstein's just like, no, stay away from her. He's freaking out. And then we see the brain of the monster, whatever brain they stole from a grave or whatever, that he has flashbacks to his childhood. Something about Erica reminds him of his childhood. And we see his mother, who, like, Neil Adams draws in this weird stylized way. Kind of weird for Neil Adams. And I guess his mother, by anyone's standards, was a beautiful woman, but this guy, especially as a kid, saw her as a horrible, shrieking harpy because she would beat him every night. She would force him to go out and beg for money and try to get jobs when he was a little boy. And no matter what money he brought home, she'd still beat the crap out of him. So, of course, not a very happy childhood. And so to him, seeing beauty meant danger. He kind of associates that in his mind. This is a perfectly drawn hand. Like, Neil Adams was such a good artist. And so the monster goes up to Erica, lifts her over his head, and throws her out the window. They're pretty high up there. And of course, Frankenstein's like, my God. The monster just walks off. And Frankenstein looks out the window and sees Erica's body. And at first he thinks she's dead, but she's moving a little. So he's like, Vlad, please help her. I'll do anything you ask. You have to help her. And so Dracula steps up to the window and he raises his face to the moon and parts his lips. And he goes, ow. And that's where the chapter ends. Oh, man, I can't wait. So next we have Tuxedo Junction. This is written by Stefano Negrini and drawn by Ennio Riboldi, two Italian artists. I looked up these guys and I couldn't find anything like American releases. They did a bunch of stuff for, Italian magazines and so this is about Glenn Miller in space. The story, it's kind of funny, kind of weird. So it's 1944. We see Glenn Miller is on a USO tour. He's been flown around by these military pilots, and all of a sudden they see a UFO. And the UFO transports Glenn Miller onto their ship. Look at these first few panels and the logo even. It looks like some classic comic strip, like Buzz Sawyer or something. So when he wakes up on the spaceship, there's this weird frog-looking dude named Manny. And Manny says, basically, he's like, don't worry, kid, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to be your manager. And the planet that he's on is called Tuxedo Junction. They renamed the planet after Glenn Miller's song. And he's like, yeah, that was your biggest hit in the galaxy. You're the biggest star anyone's ever heard. That's why we kind of snatched you. And when he goes out to the balcony, there's thousands of weird aliens with Glenn Miller placards. We love you, Glenn. He's just huge. So Glenn Miller just says, I kind of just want to go home. He says, listen, I got an offer for you. You play for a 20-day tour. We'll give you $1 million in gold. And then we'll send you home. How does that sound? And Glenn agrees. Another perk of the job is that Glenn gets to audition the best musicians in the whole galaxy. So all these weird aliens show up to the audition. There's a four-armed pianist. And so he picks his band, and they're all amazing. They play these giant stadiums. Glenn Miller's never seen crowds like this. He's getting like 12 encores every night. So it's kind of fun. But then Manny's got some bad news for Glenn. He says, Tuxedo Junction is just like any other planet. We got politics here, too. There's been a kind of a change in the political order. And as a result of which, you'll never be able to go back to Earth. But you still got the rest of the tour. So look on the bright side. So Glenn's just like, oh, fuck. Well, okay. But then as the tour continues, it seems like the dates... the bookings are kind of like not as good. At first he's playing stadiums. Now he's just playing nightclubs. And I guess, it's the pop world. There's new artists who are overshadowing Glenn Miller. He starts drinking a lot. Whatever they drink in in outer space. Space bourbon. And then it just continues as the weeks go on. It's like he's playing like annual dances for unions and stuff. And Manny's just like, what can I tell you, kid? I'm sorry. It's just like, you're not as popular as you once were. But, I can still book you these tours. You'll still be pretty comfortable. And so, pretty funny, goofy story. But then we end with these really sad panels of Glenn Miller. Basically just like, I guess this is my life. He looks like he's drinking too much. And he's just playing his trombone all by himself in his room. Kind of a melancholy ending to this goofy story. This guy's art's kind of, it's very slick. It's not that unique. Some of it looks like, like Neil Adams from the Neil Adams School. Maybe that's why Neil Adams signed him up. But pretty good stuff. I don't know if I'll ever see this guy's work again. So now we have the second chapter of Bucky O'Hare, written by Larry Hama, beautifully illustrated by Michael Golden. So, I guess there's been a portal in between the dimensions. And the door of Willie, the kid we met last issue, it appears on the Bucky O'Hare spaceship. They were like, hey, what's this wooden door? And Willie pops out. And at first, Deadeye Duck wants to kill him. He's like, watch out. He's got a lightsaber. Just because Willie's holding a flashlight. And Willie explains to them, because he's a really genius kid. And he mentions that this must be because my photon accelerator has been acting up. And they're like, yeah, our photon accelerator is broken too. So something about him created this doorway in between dimensions. God, Michael Golden's such a good, funny animal artist. So good looking. So meanwhile, the spaceship, Bucky O'Hare spaceship, is getting pummeled by the toads. So Willie agrees to help. And he says, let me look at your warp drive engine. And when he goes in there, I love this panel. I've never seen Michael Golden draw anything like this. Basically, the warp drive engine is warping reality all around it. So they're all, Bucky and Willie are just kind of all tripping out here. So he says, guys, we got to go back to my bedroom. I need some parts. Because this warp drive is kaput. But I can build you a new one. So most of the crew go back with Willie. And Jenny and Blinky stay on the ship to fight the toads. Man, God, I love this panel. So this just all the toads have basically surrounded the ship. And they've captured Jenny. Meanwhile, back in the bedroom, they're collecting the stuff that Willie's going to need. Blinky pops in and says, guys, they got Jenny. You got to come back. So they all run off. And they're like, you're going to join us, Willie? He's like, yeah, you guys need a warp drive mechanic, and I'm the only one available. And he leaves a quick note for his parents, and he runs through the portal. He says, look out, universe, here I come. And that's the end of this chapter. We have a coming attractions page, and that's it for Echo of Futurepast number 2. Man, I gotta say, that Bucky O'Hare, it's no wonder it became kind of a sensation. There was that cartoon on Saturday mornings. It's like a really damn good kids comic. It's better than most. But, yeah, this issue, top notch, man. Just that hum by Giménez, that is such good shit. But everything else, pretty damn nice. Mudwogs, oh man, I'm thrilled by this issue. So I hope you guys are as thrilled as I am looking at it, because, oh man, this issue is tits. So hope you had fun watching, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.